And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Thank you for joining us today on the aviation portion of your broadcast. I'm meteorologist Emily Niebuhr. Let's take a look at your satellite imagery. We have a low pressure system moving into the Bering Sea and central Aleutians. We also have a weak trough across much of the western portion of the state. We also have a weakening low in the Gulf of Alaska, but that it's widespread enough. It's bringing some lower visibilities and ceilings to some portions of the Panhandle today. Let's look for your Saturday morning. Those systems are going to be very slow moving. So again, widespread low ceilings and visibilities. Again, red denotes IFR conditions, instrument flight rules, which means generally more challenging visibilities and ceilings for aircraft. So you can see along the western coast of the state of Alaska, widespread low ceilings and clouds for your Saturday morning, and even up into the Chukchi Sea, some low stratus. Meanwhile, in the Gulf of Alaska, with that weak low, it's going to cause NVFR conditions in portions of the Panhandle and lower ceilings along the Gulf of Alaska. By your Saturday afternoon, even though in the interior we're expecting mostly good visibilities and ceilings, there is some risk for afternoon showers and thunderstorms in interior portions of the state. So keep up to date on your weather conditions before you fly, because there will be some thunderstorms and showers occurring across much of the region. But again, in Saturday afternoon, we're expecting widespread low visibilities and stratus associated with that low pressure system. Same story in the Gulf of Alaska. That system is not moving anywhere fast. But a little improvement by the Saturday afternoon hours in the Panhandle. By your Sunday morning, again, we're expecting widespread low ceilings and clouds across much of the Bering and along the West Bering coast, also along the Chukchi associated with some of that stratus. But we are expecting a little better conditions near the Seward Peninsula. Again, Sunday morning, a little better as that low weakens NVFR conditions, but again, be cautious in the Panhandle regions. Sunday afternoon, again, some concern for thunderstorms developing across especially eastern central areas of the state. So stay up to date on the latest observations for that afternoon. But we are expecting, again, with that low pressure system, widespread IFR conditions for your Sunday afternoon hours and low ceilings and clouds in the Gulf of Alaska as well. Let's look at your past conditions. Again, as we're looking at much of the interior, we're going to have pretty good visibilities with the exception of some of those afternoon showers and thunderstorms. So Anaktuvik Pass, VFR conditions Saturday. Adigan Pass, again, VFR conditions for your Saturday. Lake Clark and Merrill, again, VFR conditions. Rainy Pass, VFR conditions. Windy Pass, VFR conditions, but again, a few afternoon thunderstorms are possible. Same concerns in Isabel, mainly VFR conditions with the exception of a few thunderstorms in the afternoon for your Saturday. Same story for Mentasta Pass. Again, watch out for a few thunderstorms in the region. Tahina Pass, same story. VFR conditions, good visibilities with the exception of a few afternoon thunderstorms. Portage, again, VFR conditions, some morning NVFR conditions in the east entrance of the pass. But again, Portage should be pretty good most of the day. Chilkoot and White Passes will be NVFR conditions with that weakening low we were just mentioning. Let's take a look at some of your freezing levels. As you can see, we are seeing some warmer air in the Bering Sea associated with that low. It's bringing up some warm air and with the ridge ahead of that low, I should say. 12,000 feet, 14,000 feet. Meanwhile, that weakening low in the Gulf of Alaska, we're seeing lower freezing levels of about 8,000 feet. And across much of the interior, pretty standard, up to 10 to 12,000 feet for your freezing levels on your Saturday morning. For your icing, the main concerns, again, are associated with that weakening low pressure system and its associated front. So that'll be about 14,000 feet, generally isolated moderate, maybe a few patches of considerable moderate. But again, no widespread icing concerns expected for your Saturday. Maybe a few spots associated with that weakening low in the Gulf of Alaska. But generally pretty good conditions across the state. Let's look at your jet stream. Our strongest jet is associated with that system spinning in the Bering Sea. We're seeing 100 knots just south of the Aleutian Islands. We do have another, a much weaker jet up in the atmosphere at about 35 knots across the Kenai Peninsula and interior areas. And finally, we have 105, 110 knots south of Alaska with that jet. Now, as we go lower in the atmosphere, we're looking at a jet of about 45 knots just off the coast of the west coast of the Bering Sea. We also have the jet is much weaker at 9,000 feet. We're just looking at about 50 knots or so. As we go down to about 3,000 feet, we are seeing that still that low level jet, some southerly flow, 45 to 40 knots, again across much of the west coast associated with that low pressure system and trough associated with that. So be aware of that. And we also have widespread 40 knots across much of the southern Bering and Aleutian Islands. And so that jet is going to be causing a little bit of turbulence. So again, we're expecting considerable moderate to isolated moderate across the Alaska Peninsula and across the Bristol Bay region. But again, surface to 4,000 feet, that's associated with that low level jet that we were just looking at.